Hello, so those of you who live or work in the Sahel, NGOs, faith-based organizations, infrastructure companies, well, brace yourself for an extremely difficult period ahead. The most recent developments in the region do not bode well, and I'm not talking about UN peacekeepers and foreign forces leaving Mali or Burkina Faso, but I am concerned about military regimes there that even if they mean well, they not only they don't have the skills to govern, but they are falling victims of global geopolitics that are beyond their understanding and their control. This is Arezki Daoud of Arezki LLC and the North Africa Journal, and today is Monday, the 24th of July, 2023. Now, things in the Sahel, and here I'm referring to Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad, and Niger to a certain extent, things that are worsening by the day. The region is now largely governed by incompetent juntas. Military regimes now dominate the governments of the Sahel nations. The countries in the region have experienced a series of coups that allowed or enabled soldiers to take over power. In Chad, the reign of an illegitimate military junta has been perpetuated without interruption since 1975, with France supporting the dictatorship of the Déby, father and son. The latter, that is the son, replaced the former, that is the father, when he was murdered not too long ago. Mali and Burkina Faso are other examples of military regimes in the region who topple civilian governments. The minor exception, to a certain extent, is that of Niger, which has an elected president, but whose reign is at risk due to growing popular discontent. Well, looking ahead, events on the ground force us to assume that the militarization of the Sahel will inevitably continue. In Mali, which has become a model of its kind, the junta of Assimi Goïta undertook to delay the return to power of civilians while appointing prefects and governors and placing the police under the direct control of the army, as it happened in Sudan since 2019. Even Niger is not immune to this ongoing trend, as the government there clearly plans to increase the number of its troops by up to 50,000 soldiers, giving essentially the military hierarchy more assets and more power at the risk of witnessing a coup in the future if the military is not controlled. I hope that Niger learned a lesson from neighboring Mali, whose previous president, Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, increased the nation's defense budget and pampered the army before being overthrown by the army. Now, for the vast majority of the Sahelian populations, the situation does not appear to be gloomy as I am portraying here. Now, the previous regimes, civilians or military, have been so unpopular and too tied to Western powers, in particular the French military, that the current situation is seen as being much better by the population. Not only the populations had a negative view of the presence of French forces in the Sahel, but they're now largely saying that the security situation has improved. Okay, so it's thus unclear whether such confidence in the populations has emerged naturally, organically, or is the result of military propaganda, or even the effect of misplaced nationalism since the departure of the French military. The reality, though, on the ground is clearly less positive than what the populations are led to believe. Indeed, the Malian army has not improved its performance at all. It continues to murder civilians and set up blockades that starve the population. On the ground, it simply benefited in 2022 from a truce while Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State launched a brutal war against one another in Gao and Menaka, and while the Niger military has launched a security campaign in the Liptako-Gourma region along the border with Mali. Now, these have been given the Malian military a break of sort, but its performance has not improved at all. Broadly speaking, there is no reason to assume that military regimes would be inherently better positioned to resist jihadi onslaught or Islamist pressure. Chad, a country that benefited from some oil wealth and built what many observers qualified at some point as the best military in the region, simply failed to overcome Boko Haram on its western front and had to make concession to clerics by violating its secular constitution. From 2018, the constitution now requires civil servants to take an oath to the state in the name of God, regardless of their denominational affiliation or religious beliefs. As for Mali, some fear that one day a Sudanese or even an Afghan-style military Islamist regime will emerge there. At first, such a scenario is unlikely to materialize as the Salafist movements are less structured there. On a comparison with Afghanistan, the jihadists of Mali have neither the experience of power nor the legitimacy acquired by the Taliban after several decades of struggle against the Soviets and the American military. Ironically, now the departure of the French army deprives the jihadists of a major argument to try to broaden their social base by presenting themselves as a force of national resistance against a foreign invader. Far more worrying, though, are the factional struggles which within the military structures further weaken the Sahelian state to the benefit of jihadists and Islamist forces. Already in 2012, in Bamako, clashes between Red Berets and Green Berets had facilitated the advance of Al-Qaeda and its surrogates in northern Mali. So where do we go from here? Well, at Mea Risk, we offer advisory services that help your organization stay ahead of the problem. Contact me to find out more.